Hey everybody, welcome back, Red 13. And I've had this several times. We've talked about so many different things in sports, but it always comes down to, every time I hear this, it drives me nuts. I get the point, but when it comes to Jordan and LeBron James, or even anyone, right? It could be Kobe Bryant, he's got 5, and he lost in a final. But Michael Jordan was 6-0. That is awesome. I've given him respect in the fact that when the finals gets here, he kicks in another gear, but Jordan was always in another gear. He's different. He's 1.001% of sports history. So I don't want to hold everyone to that standard, but I've always been like, why the undefeatedness? Do you not count losing in the playoffs as a failure? I mean, it's like, oh, if you lose in the first round, we're not going to hold that against you. But if you lose in the finals, dude, you're not clutch. You're not clutch. Like if the Warriors had lost to OKC down 3-1 with the 73 win season, had they lost then, that's okay. Either way, you lose, but at least they pulled out, came back, won a Western Conference championship. They got something for it, and then did choke a 3-1 lead. Or maybe the Cavs took it back. Either way, we've covered that in the past. So I've had this debate ever since some of my other videos where I talked about, as an example, and people have made good rebuttals, but I said, what would be better then? Tom Brady at 7-3 or Joe Montana at 4-0? And people have actually said, they're like, you can't use that argument, which is true, when you compare Jordan and James, because James doesn't have more, right? At least Brady has more Super Bowl titles than Joe Montana. So he's got 7, Joe's got 4, that should be it. But I've always gone to the point with Jordan and James, I said, let's hypothetically say that James was 8-2. Let's say he won 8 titles, right? Would that have been enough to say, hey, he is better? No, it wouldn't have been. It would have always been, hey, he had to jump with these guys. He had to go with this. He had to build. And that, I could see that. He should have stayed in Cleveland. I don't want to get sidetracked. Let's get back to the point. Today, we're talking about Joe Montana at 4-0 and Tom Brady at 7-3. Who is better at that stage? I'm going to put up stat numbers, but it's going to come down to, what do you think is better? What would you rather have? And it's tough because people have actually told me in the comments, oh, Joe Montana's better. 4-0. He made it. 4-0, baby. He never lost in the final. He never lost in a Super Bowl. Therefore, Joe Montana's got to be better. So let's cover that. First, we'll get to Brady's Super Bowls. We know he's been in 10, 02, 04, 05, 08, 12, 15, 17, 18, 19. That was an amazing run. 17, 18, 19, 3 straight. And 21 with the Bucks. So as we go through these, here's a few interesting stats. This is why I never like to say, when you put it like GOAT, who's the GOAT? Well, in 2 of his Super Bowls, he actually passed under, or 50% or under. Only 2. The rest were all 60 or higher. Really, really good performances. His very first one against the Rams, that was a defensive game. He won that one. So even when he wasn't great, he won that one. And then his other one was Super Bowl 18, where he was under 50%. They lost that one. I want to say that was the Eagles. I think that was the Eagles Super Bowl. So, it comes down, in the end, it's still a team game. But those are the 2 ones. His 10 game average, 65%. So in his 10 Super Bowls, we're going to take the average of him and Joe and see who plays better. 65% completion percentage. Joe Montana's, in his 4 Super Bowls, 68% completion percentage. So Joe's got him on that. Now, I don't care if it's 4, I don't care if it's 10. In the end, you got to average that. If Joe had played at 10, I don't see it coming down, because Brady's had some up and down games. And Joe Montana, his lowest in any of them was 63%. We just talked about Tom had 2 at 50% or lower. So that, we give that to Joe. What is more impressive with Joe in his Super Bowl performances is that we'll get to that in a second. Let me get to the next one. The next is yards per game. Tom Brady, 303 yards per game. Joe Montana, 285. So we do see Joe take a step back. Now, his completion percent was great, but in Joe's Super Bowls, 2 of those were against the Bengals, who were outstanding defenses, and they were defensive matchups. But still, got to give this one to Tom, right? And what's crazy to me with Tom is, when I think of his Super Bowls, there's never, at least to me, a play where, it's the big bomb to Tyreek Hill, for the Super Bowl win or something like that. This huge 50-yard, 60-yard. It's everything short. And they play in the similar type of offense, and that's what Joe was. But Joe did have plays to Jonathan Taylor, Jerry Rice. He did have big big time, better receivers as well than Brady's had, other than Randy Moss. You got to go with the Hall of Famers for Joe Montana. But right there, 285 yards. So that's a big difference. That's a huge difference, almost 20 yards a game less. Let's get to the yards per catch. So, or yards after the guy catches it. Tom's is 7.2. Joe Montana, 9.4. We just talked about that. Joe had bigger plays downfield. Brady, not as much. So Brady that's what was always frustrating when you watch Brady in these Super Bowls. You're like, why can't these defenses stop this guy? Who's this little 83 guy, this Wes Welker guy, who's catching 5-yard outs and making these and getting first down after first down after first down? It was like death by 1,000 cuts. While Joe could do that, or Joe could say, here's a 20-yarder, here's a 17-yarder, here's a 15, 20-yard touchdown. So we see in the stats, yards per game, maybe Joe's came down because that he also had better running backs with Roger Craig, but much better running game than Brady, who I think Corey Dillon was probably his best running back ever, I want to say. I mean, LeGarrette Blount, I still think Corey Dillon was better than him in their prime. So we do know that, and different eras, I will give you that, but this Brady offense was designed for that. So touchdowns, 2.1 for Tom Brady, 2.1 in 10 Super Bowls, while Joe Montana, 2.8, nearly 3 Super Bowls, or 3 touchdowns, almost a whole touchdown more. So you got to give it to there. Remember, Montana did have, I think, a 5-touchdown game. He did have blowouts over Denver. And who was the other one? Dang it escapes me. But he did. I thought he had 2 blowout Super Bowls. Maybe, yeah, no, they never played Buffalo. Chris Berman always wanted that every year, unfortunately. But, so Montana's got the edge there. We're comparing stats, right? You're seeing Brady more, or Montana a little more accurate. Both good, but Montana a little more accurate. Brady getting more yards. Montana getting better touchdowns. And even a little bit more on yards per catch afterwards. And then this one really, really is amazing. It's a little, no, I'm not even going to put it down. Interceptions, 0.6 for Brady. His worst Super Bowl, he had 2 interceptions in it. They still won that one. That was against the Seahawks. Malcolm Butler, game saver right there. And that's, you never know, man. And that's what's so crazy, as I go on a side note like I do sometimes, is I've had debates with friends where they're like, oh man, if Seattle had won that, oh, Brady, like back then they were saying, oh, Brady ain't the GOAT. If he had lost that one to Seattle, he ain't the GOAT. Why? Why would he not be? If you're going to label someone the greatest of all time, what did he do on that sideline that dictated of whether or not he was the GOAT? Jump up and down and cheer when Malcolm Butler got the pick? I mean, if they handed off to Marshawn Lynch, there might have been about 20 seconds. Maybe Brady drives and gets him in field goal range. Maybe he sets something up and they have a potential kick to tie it. Maybe. That's what I was thinking watching the game. I'm like, if Seattle score, it was a done deal. Seattle's going to score. When they score, is it going to be Tom has enough time to come back, which he has before? Could he do it? And then Malcolm Butler made the pick and it's over. But if I'm Seattle, I'm running 3 straight downs and letting the clock run. So the worst scenario, you score with like 10 seconds. And they didn't. And so the Patriots win that, and then people are like, oh, he's the GOAT, he's the GOAT. From what? Everything he did, he earned it. But he needed his defense to finish the game. He needed Vinatieri. That's why I always say my opinion of Tom wouldn't have changed. He's amazing. He's already one of the best ever. You could put him top 5, whether he was 5-5 in Super Bowls or 7-3. He's already one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time. So a play here and there at the end does not make me say Tom Brady's a failure or success. Basketball, when we talked about with LeBron, it's a little different. LeBron's out there the whole time. Offense, defense. Brady's on the sideline half the game. So let's get back to it. So he's 0.6. Joe Montana, 0 interceptions. That's one of the craziest stats. 4 Super Bowls, 1 Super Bowl. You are in a Super Bowl and you got pressure. You got 2 weeks sometimes of just media, just day and night thinking of that big game, and to not throw a pick. Now, I don't remember every Super Bowl with Joe Montana. I was really young. The only one I remember really seeing was some of the Denver one highlights, and then I did see the one against the Bengals, the last one. And in that one, Joe Montana, it was number 22, I think, for the Bengals. He almost had a pick. He had it in the back of the end zone, straight up in his hands, off his chest, and he drops it. So Joe did make a bad throw. I don't know the other ones. Maybe they had more drop picks. But that was an awful throw that the DB, I mean, it's just like playing catch in your backyard. Maybe his eyes got big and he just but if you watch the play, there's no reason he should have dropped it. If he holds on, Joe Montana's 3-1. There is no last-second touchdown against the Bengals. where, you know, John Candy's in the crowd, all the legendary stories. But it didn't happen that way because the guy wasn't good enough to hold on. So hats off. Joe Montana, 4-0, 0 interceptions. That stat blows my mind. So 0 picks in the Super Bowl. Sacks per game, they're even. 1.9 for Brady, 1.8 for Joe. Neither of them are outrunners. They're not Lamar Jackson even close. Heck, Lamar Jackson at 10 probably could have scrambled better than both these guys in their prime. And their rating. Brady, this is impressive. Now, we've talked about Brady's had 2 picks. Remember, the interceptions really bring your ratings down. And Brady's had games with 1 or 2 picks. He's had defensive struggles. But Joe Montana, listen to this. Brady's was 97 rating. Great rating. In 10 Super Bowls, I mean, I don't care, dude. Either way, you're there and you won 7. But 97 rating. Joe Montana's 127. Good night. So, looking at the stats, I got to be honest. I would say Joe's stats are more impressive. Less Super Bowl, but more impressive. He's got the better yards, or the yards per catch. He's got the better touchdowns by a whole touchdown. He's got the better completion percent. And the rating is through the roof because of that big goose egg at interceptions. Everything else is almost the same. Brady does have slight more yards, and maybe that's because of the era they're in. And not having Roger Craig, you can't hold that against Joe. But here's another fact. Let's get to some other things as we talk about 7. In my opinion, I'm going to say right now, I would rather have Tom Brady's career. Right? You got the pain of those 3 losses. He will tell you he always thinks about the Super Bowl losses. You don't think about the wins. I mean, you do. You treasure him. He's got the 7 rings. We've seen the photos. But when you look at it and you think about it, 10 Super Bowls, and you win 7. When you could put more rings than you have on fingers in one hand, dang, man, dang, that is legendary. And I gotta say that's better than 4-0. And here's why. Because as people will sit there and say, dude, when it came game time, when it was the big lights of the Super Bowl, no one was better than Joe. He didn't lose it. Well, Joe still had to play one side. It's still a team game. His defense was top notch. That Niners team, I think the only touchdown, I could be wrong, but I think the only touchdown that Niners gave up that game, it could have been field goals too, there was a kick return. The Niners didn't even give that up. That was a kick return. So it was a defensive game, and in the end, it only matters is what happened. And Joe won 4-0, but Tom got 7-3. And every single Super Bowl for Brady was close. Every single one. Even the one where he's getting dominated 28-3 and made a comeback. Joe never had to deal with something like that. Now, it was, Brady's fault too. He didn't play great the first nearly 3 quarters of that game. But I just think it's better because as we go through this, 15 seasons. Now, one season he only played 1 game. So you got to take that off. We'll take that off for Joe. So 14 seasons, 4 Super Bowls. His playoff record is 16-7. Isn't that pretty cool? He's number 16, Joe Montana. 16-7. None of those losses were in the Super Bowl, but he lost in 3 conference championships, 2 NFC championships, and 1 AFC. Now, I will give him a slack on the AFC. Part of some of those important attributes is being available. And Joe was in that game, and he got knocked out. It was like 6-3 to Buffalo, and he got a concussion, and then he missed the rest of the game. So, it is what it is. Injuries really kind of hurt him, but he lost 2 NFC championships. He actually lost, as we go through it too, he lost 1 AFC championship, 2 wild cards, and 2 divisionals. So there was a time even the great Joe Montana lost in the opening round. Brady, if you look at it, Brady had a longer career. So, we expect that. Brady lost 2 AFC championships. I want to say he lost 1 to the Colts, 1 to the Ravens. 4 divisional. Remember Joe Montana? Joe lost 2 divisional. Both of them lost 2 wild card. Now, Brady's last wild card was this last year in Tampa. They were 8-9, or I think they were 8-8. They had whatever it was. They had no reason even getting in the playoffs. It's because it had extended. It is what it is. But Joe never got in with a cheap record like that. So I think it's because they won their division, which was nonsense. That division was garbage. But they still got in, got a home game, and the better team, Cowboy team, beat them. So as you look at that, you go through it and you go, yeah, the way Montana lost those other things, it's to me, I look at it and go, if you failed to make it in 14 seasons, right, you lost 7 times. So half of your, what is that? He made 4 Super Bowls in 14 seasons. So 10 times he failed to even get there. And heck, a bunch of times he failed to even get to the Final Four. Brady got to 10 Super Bowls and 2 AFC championships that he lost to Baltimore and the Colts. So he could have been to 12, much bigger than Joe. So as we look at it and we go, what's more impressive and what would you rather have? Comment in this comment section, please. Let me know. Me, I'm saying Brady, 7 Super Bowls. You could take the 3 losses. Joe's 4-0. He never felt bad after a Super Bowl, any that he's been in. But man, I promise you, he felt bad after those NFC titles that he lost to the AFC Championship. He felt bad after those. While Brady got to play in a lot of other games. And so, in my opinion, 7-3, regardless of the 7 Super Bowls, 7 Super Bowl wins with 3 losses, and getting there 10 times, nearly half your career, is better than getting there 4 times and failing 10 other times for Joe Montana. And like I said, all the Brady Super Bowls could have been either way. And we just talked about Joe's. Could have been either way. The DB dropped it. So it wasn't like he was out there not ever throwing an interception. So that is it on Joe and Brady. You might watch this and say, of course, it's obvious it's 7. But there are people out there who have said that. They've commented in the sections when we're discussing LeBron James. They're like, 4 is better. Joe Montana better by a mile. And I guarantee you there will be some, if people comment on this, that they'll say Joe Montana is better. I can't agree with that. You can give me your reasons in the comments. I am totally one. I've changed on my opinion on Brady. I've changed on LeBron. I've changed on MJ. We talked about it in previous videos. I am all for hearing information and learning. But there's nothing I don't think you can say. You can debate it. That's what I love about social media and being on here. You can talk about it. You can tell me. And if I hear good points, I will always be honest. I will never be disrespectful. And I promise to give my straight opinion on what I think when it comes to your guys' responses. But I can't see anything. Share with me. Let me know what you think, if I'm wrong and why. Thanks a lot, guys. Look for more videos coming soon. Always appreciate it. And if you stayed this long and you haven't subscribed, because 70 to 80% of the people that watch my videos have not subscribed. Subscribe. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep coming out with great sports content, including fantasy football, especially as it gets closer to the season. If you are into fantasy sports, you're going to love to want to stick around and hear that stuff. And I'll even have live shows where I'll answer any questions when it comes to fantasy season. Talk to you guys later. Peace.